Heretic is a dark fantasy first-person shooter video game released in 1994. It was developed by Raven Software, published by id Software, and distributed by GT Interactive. The game was released on Steam on August 3, 2007. Using a modified version of the Doom engine, Heretic was one of the first first-person games to feature inventory manipulation and the ability to look up and down. It also introduced multiple gib objects that spawned when a character suffered a death by extreme force or heat. Previously, the character would simply crumple into a heap. The game used randomized ambient sounds and noises, such as evil laughter, chains rattling, distantly ringing bells, and water dripping in addition to the background music to further enhance the atmosphere. All of the music in the game was composed by Kevin Skalder. An indirect sequel, Hexen, Beyond Heretic, was released the following year. Heretic 2 was released in 1998, which served as a direct sequel continuing the story. Plot: three brothers, known as the Serpent Riders, have used their powerful magic to possess 7 kings of Parthoros into mindless puppets and corrupt their armies. The Siege Elves resist the Serpent Riders' magic. The Serpent Riders thus declared the Siege as heretics and waged war against them. The Siege are forced to take a drastic measure to sever the natural power of the kings, destroying them and their armies, but at the cost of weakening the Elves' power, giving the Serpent Riders an advantage to slay the Elders. While the Siege retreat, one elf sets off on a quest of vengeance against the weakest of the 3 Serpent Riders, Sparrow. He travels through the City of the Damned, the ruined capital of the Siege, then past Hellsmoor and finally the Dome of Sparrow. The player must first fight through the undead hordes infesting the location where the Elders performed their ritual. At its end is the gateway to Hellsmoor, guarded by the Iron Liches. After defeating them, the player must seal the portal and so prevent further infestation, but after he enters the portal guarded by the Molotovs, he finds himself inside Sparrow's dome. After killing Sparrow, Corvus ends up on a perilous journey with little hope of returning home. Gameplay: the gameplay of Heretic is heavily derived from Doom, with a level-based structure and an emphasis on finding the proper keys to progress. Many weapons are similar to those from Doom. The early weapons in particular are near-exact copies in functionality to those seen in Doom. Raven added a number of features to Heretic that differentiated it from Doom, however, notably interactive environments, such as rushing water that pushes the player along, and inventory items. In Heretic, the player can pick up many different items to use at their discretion. These items range from health potions to the Morphovum, which transforms enemies into chickens. One of the most notable pickups that can be found is the Tome of Power, which acts as a secondary firing mode for certain weapons, resulting in a much more powerful projectile from each weapon, some of which change the look of the projectile entirely. Heretic also features an improved version of the Doom engine, sporting the ability to look up and down within constraints, as well as fly. However, the rendering method for looking up and down merely uses a proportional pixel shearing effect rather than any new rendering algorithm, which distorts the view considerably when looking at high elevation angles. As with Doom, Heretic contains various cheat codes that give the player invulnerability, obtain every weapon, be able to instantly kill every monster in a particular level, and several other abilities. However, if the player uses the All Weapons cheat from Doom, a messenger appears warning the player against cheating and takes away all of his weapons, leaving him with only a quarterstaff. If the player uses the God Mode cheat from Doom, the game will display a message saying trying to cheat, now you die, and kills the player. The original shareware release was the game to come bundled with support for online multiplayer through the nascent Dwango service. Shadow of the Serpent Riders, the original version of Heretic, was only available through shareware registration and contained 3 episodes. The retail version, Heretic, Shadow of the Serpent Riders, was distributed by GT Interactive in 1996 and featured the original 3 episodes plus 2 additional episodes, The Ossuary, which takes the player to the shattered remains of a world conquered by the Serpent Riders several centuries ago, and the stagnant Emerson, where the player enters Sparrow's birthplace. This version was the first official release of Heretic in Europe. A free patch was also downloadable from Raven's website to update the original Heretic with the content found in Shadow of the Serpent Riders. Source release: in 1999, the source code of the game engine used in Heretic was published by Raven Software under a license that granted rights to non-commercial use, and was re-released under the GNU General Public License on September 4, 2008. This resulted in ports to Linux, Amiga, and other operating systems, and updates to the game engine to utilize 3D acceleration. The shareware version of a console port for the Dreamcast was also released. The Blasphemer project aims to create a free content package for Heretic, with a theme of metal-inspired dark fantasy, in a similar way as Free Doom does with Doom. Reception: Heretic received mixed reviews, garnering an aggregated score of 62% on GameRankings and 78% on PC Zone. References: External links, official webpage, official community website, Heretic on Moby Games, Heretic at DMOZ, Heretic article at the Doom Wiki.